This episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks is brought to you by Gigabyte's AMD X570 ARS motherboards for third-generation AMD Ryzen 3000 processors. Hit the link in the description below for more details. In this episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, we'll have 32-core Threadripper rigs you'll love to hate, Microsoft's many Surfaces, killer good Wi-Fi 6. We'll be OnePlusing it and ranking our robot overlords. Next. Man, I tell you, I can't get used to that dead air when I'm doing the tease. It's rough. How you doing, everybody? Dave Altavilla here for Hot Hardware, and welcome to another episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, the show where we're trying to cobble together brains to be complete 2.5 geeks, even though, you know, it's a fraction of a geek in there somewhere. Because it's been a long week. We've been traveling. We've been working way too hard and sleeping not enough. Marco, how are you doing today? I got Marco with me here today.
I'm doing all right. A little frazzled. Life is, hit me with a few punches the last week or so, but, we will persevere.
Rolling with the punches. And someone who looks decidedly more fresh than both of us combined, I think, is this young lady right here. Her name's Brittany Getting, and she is one of the pair of fabulous Gettings we have at Hot Hardware. She's the other fabulous Getting. Brittany, how are you today?
I'm probably in Marco's boat as well, probably not getting enough sleep. And the only reason I look fresher is because I reapplied some makeup before I came on here. So,
I need the makeup girl too. It's like, sit back in the chair, put the things in your collar and
I am my own makeup girl. So I don't have anyone with me.
Jealous. Yes. We're not that fancy, Marco. How are you doing? You get your own makeup girl over there? Does Izzy pull that off once in a while?
We're not going to talk about it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Sure. Just be that way. No, yeah. That's fine. But you don't need a makeup girl. You have that beard, so No,
I ditched the beard. I'm back to the goat.
Oh, you do have the goat going.
Yeah, the beard was making me look too old, man.
Yeah, mine does too. Like right here, it just grows in gray, and then I look like a reverse Billy Goat, which doesn't make any sense at all. So I just don't even go with it. I
tried. I have so many friends, including Chris here on the podcast with these big bushy beards. I'm like, let me give it a shot. Man, it wasn't for me.
Brittany, does the beard, does that work for you with Chris? Do you like that manly?
The beard is look? Fine. He's part Viking, so it works for him.
Okay, gotcha. Vikings, technology, we're going to hit all the high notes. Brittany's joining us for a couple of the interesting headlines we'll be talking about a little bit later in the cast, but we've got a ton of stuff. We missed you for a couple of weeks. Sorry about that, folks. But we get busy and end up on planes, trains, and automobiles, and overworked and underpaid. We missed a couple of weeks, but good to be back now, and there's lots to talk about as a result of that as we ramp up to the Q4 holiday technology buzz extravaganza that it is. So lots to go through. And Marco's been actually playing around with some toys pre-holiday himself, and took the time to, I guess it's a toy, but it's also very much a tool. Took the time to build himself a killer, and I am talking killer 32-core AMD Threadripper rig that he says you'll love to hate, and I'm trying to understand why we'll hate it or love to hate it or some sort of love-hate relationship. Can you explain this?
Sure. So regular viewers of the podcast know that my machine was dying on the last podcast. My workstation was dying or about to die during the last podcast. And I had been, planning to build a new rig for months and months and months, but I just couldn't wait any longer. So I cobbled up some parts that I had around here in the lab, bought a few other parts. And, I had some unique requirements. If you look at all the most gorgeous machines built today, they're typically tempered glass and tons of RGB and no optical drives and really outlandish looking chassis and not a ton of add-in cards. I needed an optical drive. I have a bunch of add-in cards. The case is really subdued, so I thought I'd have a little fun with the headline and throw that love to hate thing in there. Seemed to work, 40,000 views on the video on Facebook, a few thousand here on YouTube as well. So, I built this killer rig with a 32-core Threadripper, a killer MSI motherboard, Pioneer Blu-ray burner, Sound Blaster AE5, like a bunch of cool stuff in there. And I think it came out really good. At least if you look at the lighting in the video, man, I think that system came out pretty. But Chris, I'm partial.
Yeah, of course you are. You're partial to what you create for your own computer beings. Chris, can you cut to some of the highlight pics of this thing, and let's go down. There's a little video there. Marco is going to pull it together for you. But some time lapse going on. Oh, he's got the heat sink condom on his finger. That's excellent. Got to have
that's it.
you got to practice safe heat sink thermal paste application. And there's the lighting setup there. So explain what the cooling looks like. You've got what appears to be a single big radiator up top, but you got some other cooling going on there too, right?
So it's funny that Chris lands on that clip in particular. You'll notice the water pump is not lit up in that shot. So I originally had this Enermax Lictech, really hard to say that name without laughing, Lictech 240 millimeter all-in-one cooler here from the original Threadripper review. The review kits came with a couple different coolers, and that cooler was brand new in the box. I hadn't used it for the review. I used our Thermaltake cooler for the review. So I said, let me throw it in this rig because it has a full contact water plate that covers the entire heat spreader on Threadripper. The first time I turned the system on, the thing basically exploded. If you watch the video and you go all the way to the end, we put a little stinger in there where you can hear the parts floating around in the radiator. So I ended up, because we were in a time crunch, just running to Micro Center and replacing it with the second gen Lictech cooler from Enermex, which is a 280 millimeter. So I did make some tweaks in the video. You can see it all, happen, not live, but, documented it all on video. And it's running well now, but our friends at Gamers Nexus recently posted a video showing a whole slew of these broken Enermax coolers, coincidentally. So I'm a little leery. I might want to change that out. But, for now, the system's rocking. Super fast, nice and quiet. Everything is stable. It's wicked fast with that much memory and Optane drive, 32 cores at its disposal. It was a fresh Windows install. It's just buttery right now.
Wicked pissa fast, as we would say up here in New England. Excellent. And actually, I should apologize to folks real quick. The stream headline somehow changed out to one from yesteryear, like months back. I don't know how this happened, but we now have the right headline in the stream. So if you're watching, we are talking about Threadripper, killer Threadripper rigs, and not some Motorola phone. We just figured we'd mix it up for you, make sure you're, paying attention. The description didn't. He's going to blame YouTube. Okay. Well, that's easy to do. Why not blame the YouTube? The headline changed, but we're back now. We got the headline right. And the description didn't change. So we're good there. So what else can you tell us about this thing? How's it been holding up since you fired up the rig? Is it everything you thought it would be? Is 32? Are you really making use of 32 cores, or like when you're playing Minesweeper?
No, not yet. You know what? I'm digging the system a lot. I do want to experiment with virtualization and just playing around with having multiple virtual machines running, and having all those cores will help. I will say, which is funny, I fixed 3 machines for family and friends over the last week, quad cores on down. One was a Core i3 dual core, dual core 4-thread Core i3. I think it was Sandy Bridge generation or maybe Haswell generation. Man, Windows 10 behaves a lot better with more cores. You can feel the difference. Even with a fast, high clocked dual core, you feel like you need more cores when you're just doing random stuff on Windows 10. So do I need 32 cores? No. It's way faster than the 6-core I had. So somewhere between 6 and 32 cores is the sweet spot.
and what was the GPU selection again?
I went with, because I love how it looks and it's just cool to say, the Power Color Radeon RX 5700 Red Devil. I wanted all AMD. The software install is so easy when you go all AMD, and just wanted. I've used AMD in my previous build, and it was stable, so I just went with it.
Nice.
I don't game enough to want it to throw in the highest end thing possible, but I mean this is plenty. I was getting by on a Fury, so this is more than enough.
The storage numbers look snappy. I'm looking at.
Yep. Look at that. Look, that 4K Q1 number on the Optane drive. That 5x the speed of a Samsung SSD.
Wow. Now, how does that translate to responsiveness in the system? And I know guys like me and you. I mean, you've got probably what like a 30-inch 4K panel at least. I've got a 34-inch 1340 by 1440 curved display. I think you got 4K display, right?
Yeah, 32-inch 4K in front of me.
So you got multiple windows open. You're multitasking all the time. Lots of creative process going on. Does that Optane drive make that experience any different?
Yes and no. Like for general tooling around, most of the time you're not going to notice a difference versus just a fast NAND-based SSD. Where I did have issues with the NAND SSD is. Let's say hypothetically I had a torrent coming down and also had like a Steam game installing. Even though the writes were only a few dozen megabytes per second, not enough to saturate the drive, you would see lag within Windows because, those 4K transfers, the peak transfer speed is much lower on a NAND-based SSD. So the consistency and performance when there's stuff happening on the system is better. During just random tooling around, it's hard to tell, but when there's load on the system, the Optane is definitely smoother.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I mean, you've got all the makings of a serious tool there, of having the right tools, but also a pretty fun gaming rig as well. Anything you would have done differently before we move on? Anything you're thinking about changing in the future?
I think I'm going to want to swap out the cooler. If you've watched a podcast in the past, I'm not I was leery of liquid cooling. So my first personal build with the liquid cooler, it exploded the first time I turned it on. So it was like sort of a sign. Other than that, there's really, it's such a huge upgrade across the board. One thing that didn't work out the way that I wanted it to, that MSI motherboard during the original briefings for Threadripper, that's what they used to show off PBO. But over the course of its life, the BIOS must have changed a few times. And even with PBO disabled, you hit the power limit on one of the, I think the PPT power limit. So enabling PBO didn't really boost performance all that much, just a slight bit. Other than that, though, I mean, I wasn't going to overclock it anyway, so not a big deal.
Yeah. Precision Boost Overdrive, for those wondering what the acronym alphabet soup is all about there. Precision Boost Overdrive, the PBO. I actually shifted gears to a Ryzen, third generation Ryzen rig myself, actually Ryzen 9 3900X. But I do now have a GeForce RTX 2080 Ti in there. Even though I don't game near enough at all, I like to play around with some of the latest games, and I was playing around with Gears 5 the other day just to check it out because I want to stay up in the tech, and I don't have enough hours to pour into it, but I like to stay involved and understand what the latest game engines look like and the technology involved. And man, that game looks freaking fabulous. So and it was a lot of fun to play. Brittany, do you get time to game at all? Do you partake in said gaming at all?
A little bit. I mean, it's been kind of a crazy couple of weeks. For those that do not know, and I don't come here very often, so probably don't. I'm also an adjunct instructor, and so it's midterm season right now, which means gaming is kind of gone out the window.
Yeah.
At least over the last couple of weeks. But usually I like to. I don't typically play too many of the newer things just because of time. And, like you said, you don't want to invest. You only have so much time to invest. So you have to kind of choose what you want to do.
Yeah, it's got to be quick hit. And by the way, Brittany was floating around in fun little windows there. And we're she's doing all kinds. She can do all kinds of magic tricks as well.
Right.
But she's the resident smarty pants at Hot Hardware. She's actually. Did you get your doctorate yet?
No, I'm in hopefully the final stretch. Within the next year and a half or so, I will have my doctorate.
My God.
In early American and Canadian religious history. So got to keep it mixed up.
Wow. Yeah, we got all kinds of geekdom going on here, and that's great stuff.
I won a spelling bee in 8th grade, Brittany.
Wow. I mean, I can't compete with that.
You and your doctorate. I won a spelling bee.
8th grade, I was strictly mediocre. I was scoring C's left and right, and not winning spelling bees or smelling bees either. But yeah, let's on that note, let's move along to something else that Marco was able to check out, and we all should roundtable a little bit and sort of get a collective opinion on, and that's Microsoft's Surface event in New York. Marco, you were in attendance. They unveiled the Surface Neo dual display foldable PC powered by Intel Lakefield Foveros tech, and then the Surface Pro 7, the Surface Pro X, and the Surface 3 laptop. But let's dive in quickly to the Neo, because probably definitely the most forward-looking device that they announced, because it's not going to be available until 2020. So yeah, that would do it. But what's interesting about this is we've actually seen, and I've spoken under NDA with multiple manufacturers in the PC space who will go nameless, that are all working on a dual display foldable device. And there's various implementations of the fold. Some of them that I've seen, have the fold in the display itself. In this case, the Neo seems to be a hinged with a little bit of a bezel in between the two displays. If I'm correct on that, Marco, I think I saw that. Yeah, and so the implementation looks a little bit more robust. You're not always going to be reflexing that a contiguous display panel across the two displays, but it's interesting, and then what's also interesting under the hood is that Microsoft is putting a stake in the sand and saying we are going with Intel Lakefield, which is the first chip. There's a good picture of it there. Thank you, Chris. That employs Microsoft 3D stacked logic, memory, and substrate 3D stack technology from different processors types in a 3D stacked silicon package. And so pretty impressive stuff. If you've seen it, I was actually at an Intel Architecture Day where they were demoing some early prototypes of just wire boards with Foveros going on with Lakefield humming along. And so this is going to be very interesting technology, both inside and out. What were your thoughts, Marco, about the usefulness of something like a Neo? I think it's pocketable, was it not? Was it like dual 5.6-inch displays or something like that?
No, it's bigger. It's like dual 9-inch.
Dual 9-inch. Okay. Yeah. So not really pocketable. I mean, certainly would go in, a backpack like nothing. What are your thoughts? Is this an adjunct, sort of supplemental device, or is this like I am now, this is my Road Warrior everything product with the ability to make phone calls too, because obviously you're going to have some 4G or 5G by the time, probably 5G modem technology, not just LTE. What are your thoughts on that?
So it's all going to boil down to the software, right? This form factor has been tried before. It's never taken off. No one's really embraced these foldable dual screens and done something where the consumers have said, wow, I need this. If Microsoft does something really cool with the software, then potentially. My gut reaction is, it's going to be one of those cool devices nobody's going to buy. We'll see. I'm sure Microsoft has some tricks up their sleeves. There's a reason there's an Intel processor in there. So we'll see. I really just don't know. But we've seen these dual screen, similar sized devices before, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. inputting on glass stinks versus a keyboard and touchpad. It's just not quite as efficient. Yeah, it opens up some interesting use cases, but I don't know. I mean, people just haven't jumped on these type of devices before, so I'm personally not feeling it.
Yeah, you know, I sort of, I'm in the wait and see mode. Like this could be a really slick product, I think, for a lot of folks, and there are plenty of folks that don't mind that. You know, maybe they have a tablet, maybe they have a 10 or 8 or whatever inch tablet, and they attach a keyboard to it, a wireless keyboard.
So
or,
I want to do,
you know, maybe an attachable keyboard. You know, iPad Pro, all that good stuff. I mean, these are form factors that are sort of out in the marketplace, not dual display, but, you know, convertible, really small devices that act as, you know, quasi laptops. I'm interested to find out what Microsoft does, as you noted, from a standpoint of software and how they, well, you know, what their vision is from a software standpoint, because the hardware, you know, you can wrap your mind around it. It's the use case that you're struggling with. That's what you're telling me. It's how useful is it going to be? And that's the software that completes that experience, right?
Right. And I mean, Microsoft's track record in mobile software is not exactly strong. Yeah, I was a user. I gave it a shot. I wanted it to kick. I wanted Windows Mobile to rock, or Windows Phone, and, you know, it failed. But we'll see. There's a vision here. And, you know, we saw that Courier patent years ago. This is something that has been in the works a long time. So there has to be some new tricks up Microsoft's sleeve. So We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. And Craig makes a good point in the chat. Craig Dieter says, Microsoft, got to say, Microsoft brought some damn cool devices. And that's what, for me, this Microsoft Surface event was so impressive, was that, you know, when we used to wait for Steve Jobs, and I'm going to make the obvious comparison. I'm sorry, Marco, you hate the comparison to Apple a little bit. I know that. But, you know, when Steve Jobs used to roll out on stage, you know, the press and analysts community would be on pins and needles, because there's going to be some wow thing. There was going to be some sort of impressive, you know, innovation, true innovation. And we're just not seeing that right now from Apple. What's interesting is that the tables have turned completely, and we're now seeing that from Microsoft. They have an ecosystem of partners that develop devices for their software, you know, laptops, what have you, that they don't want to directly compete with, but they took the right approach. I think Satya Nadella leading the charge here, saying we want to set the bar, we want to innovate and sort of show best practice in design and implementation for our OEM partners to, you know, take inspiration from, and then to hopefully innovate and iterate on top of. And my goodness, they're actually really pulling that off pretty well. I think they're actually stepping out with what everyone who's in this, you know, in the tech scene would agree are at least some new innovations, right? I mean, is that fair, or am I being too generous for them?
I personally think that was generous. And I'll tell you why. No, I get it. You know what? Because the messaging was good and the response was awesome. But now, a few days removed, and you know, stepping back and looking at the devices, right? The dual screen form factor, I'm not sold on it. The Duo, you know, we've seen Asus notebooks with that secondary screen. We've seen other small notebooks with a secondary screen like that. It's not a real true breakthrough form factor. And then you look at all of the new Surface devices. Yes, they're cool. Microsoft definitely phoned in the last few generations. No USB-C, old hardware inside. So we have nice bleeding edge hardware inside. AMD's been embraced in the new notebook, at least in the 15-inch version. Great to see the diversity there. We have Qualcomm in the Surface Pro X, you know, with that custom 8-core processor inside there. So Windows on ARM on an official Microsoft device. Lots of exciting news, but there's really nothing new in the devices. You know, like the platforms are new, but if you were to pick up that Surface Pro X and put it next to a 4th gen Surface Pro, you can't tell the difference. Maybe because it has a USB-C port.
Yeah, so I would I would argue on that one as well. And so again, here on the Surface devices, and then we'll have to get Brittany's take on this because maybe we need like a middle ground referee. Yeah, right.
Okay. I'm sure I'm shocking everybody because I'm a Microsoft.
Oh, you are, dude. You are. I am a little shocked. And so, yeah, absolutely. But no, I would argue quite the contrary. I mean, certainly ergonomics and physical attributes. I mean, I'm sure there was some styling tweaks, but relatively the same. And I agree with you on that. But what impressed me about Microsoft's offering on the Surface, the standard Surface line, whether it be the Pro 7, the Pro X, which is the, it's a quasi Snapdragon 8CX, modified, tweaked out Snapdragon 8CX ARM core processor underneath on the Surface Pro X, and then the Surface Laptop 3, which now has an AMD platform option as well, Ryzen, as well as Ice Lake Intel, I believe, right? So what impressed me about that is that Microsoft said, you know what? We're going to bring all the PCR, all the x86 and by the way, ARM to our products now. We're going to make all those offerings available. We're going to support them all. And actually, where we think they best fit. In the case of the Surface Pro X, this is a thin and light, always connected device with, an a 4 gig, I think a multi-gig LTE modem. These are the right platforms for the type of device. The Surface Pro 7, and then the Laptop 3, which is a little bit beefier device. And hence now you've got a little bit beefier processor offering with Ryzen options as well. And so for me, again, that's something that, you don't see, we didn't see from Microsoft. They really picked one horse, one pony, and said, we're an Intel shop. Now it's like, hey, bring it all. We're bringing it all. So I thought that was cool too. And so for me, that's it's innovation in a way, but it's making use of the most available platforms out there in the market. So.
Yeah, but like if you step back, right? Microsoft now has Intel, AMD, and ARM-based devices.
Yeah.
So does everybody else.
Except Apple.
Yeah, but who cares?
Well, Apple's only huge, right? The
right.
Other, I mean, you have to think about it from a standpoint of market share, and they've got a pretty good chunk of market share.
So actually, no, Apple is all three as well. It's AMD graphics in the Mac Pros. They have ARM in the phones, and they have Intel in the notebooks. Like they embrace all three companies.
Okay, all right. Brittany, what do you think about this?
I'm probably more Camp Marco, to be honest, because I mean, like once again, like you said, like it's great that Microsoft is doing this. I'm glad to see them spreading their wings, if you will. But it isn't super new, right? It's not like, and this is the next stage of technology, and we're pioneering something you've never seen before, right? So it's great that they're doing it, and I'm glad that they're doing it, but I don't necessarily think it's the most innovative thing that can happen. With regards to foldable devices, for me, whenever I look at a device, I always try to think of how that actually fits into my everyday life. What would that look like practically? What would I bring it along with me? Is that going to have a lot of uses? And when it comes to foldable devices, I'm just not entirely convinced that they're the most practical device, at least for me. For me, in my everyday life, I'm either going to want something that's very small, like a smartphone, or I'm going to want something quite large, like a desktop or a laptop that I can actually fully work on to do whatever it is I need. So I'm not really sure. I feel like the foldable device is really more of a niche market than it is something that's going to be universally accepted. But I kind of feel like that's been this case with a lot of tablets that have come out in the last, I guess you could say, decade or so.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I think we're all sort of waiting to see how foldable devices mature. I think, and I would agree with you, Brittany. I think that, it's a new device category now that's been carved out. It's here to stay, that category, if you will. But whether or not, we're all going to be, waving the flag, who knows? It could be another one of those netbook moments. Remember the netbook Marco, right?
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
So, I will say, I think the devices are going to sell like crazy, right? Microsoft needed this to breathe new life into the Surface line after the last few generations. So I think they're going to sell a ton.
Yeah, I think the Surface devices will too.
Yeah, and I think with an official Microsoft high-end Surface based on ARM, there's going to be a lot of development work on that platform. which is all good stuff. We're going to have these, multi-day battery life, always connected devices running a version of Windows 10 that may be indistinguishable from a regular desktop. Right now, there's software incompatibilities that you hit with the ARM-based devices. I have a feeling that that's going to be worked on hard. So we'll see.
Yeah. And we don't, by the way, Brittany, we don't mind Freckles in the background explaining her opinion as well. That's important too. But I don't know if her mic switched off or something there. Chris, you might want to check it. She just echoed out. But, I will add one more thing and then we should move on. I did want to say that the other differentiator for me with Microsoft is what they're doing with One OS across all of these devices, right? They've got Windows across all of these devices, where with Apple, you've got a fragmentation of Mac OS and iOS. And Microsoft doesn't have that. You've got, a similar experience on Xbox now, and they're doing a really good job, I think, executing relative to, that, same UI, same, hopefully, platform experience across multiple different silicon platforms. And I don't see anybody else necessarily doing that, quite as well. So again, Marco, I've got the Microsoft cheerleading hat on today. This is usually you. What's up, dude? You're cranky today or something.
I am cranky today, but I'm a Microsoft fan, dude, and I want them to do cool stuff because I want them to do this crazy innovation, but really, if I were to, and I don't mean this negatively because the Surfaces are nice devices, but if you pick up a Surface Pro 7, right, and you walk down the street, nobody's going to go, wow, a Surface Pro 7, because it looks just like all the other ones.
Right.
And I guess that's a good thing that they came out with a device category that's been so popular for years, but, just slapping the latest Intel platform inside or the latest processor inside isn't quite as impressive to me, is all I'm saying. But
yeah.
It's a significant upgrade across the board with lots of diversity now, and that's good.
Yeah. No, I think we're all happy to see additional silicon platforms introduced. So good stuff all around, and impressive that the folks at Qualcomm got their design win with the Surface Pro X. That was like, hey, we almost didn't think we'd see that, and it happened. So yeah, cool. Let's move on and talk about. Let's see. What should we go to next? Let's go to mobile devices and talk about the new OnePlus 7T. Marco, you took that baby for a spin. Fast, premium, and a fantastic Android value. I know you're a former Samsung guy, Samsung Note, I believe, Galaxy Note guy, right?
Yep.
And so what do you think about this thing, which is very un-Samsung-like, right?
I love it. Here it is. I'm in the process of making it my daily driver. I'm transferring all my stuff to it now. Really, really cool phone. What I think, so just quick specs out of the way, because that's really the key to what makes this phone so great, that and pricing. Latest Snapdragon platform, 855 Plus inside, linked to 8 gigs of LPDDR4 memory and 128 gigs of dual lane UFS 3 storage. So really fast internal hardware, triple camera array on the back, small tiny bump out for the front camera. Beautiful 90 hertz AMOLED display on the front, 6.55 inch AMOLED display with a 2400 by 1080 res. It's about 402 ppi. So it hits a lot of high points in terms of those high level specs. And if you look through the numbers, killer performance. One of the fastest phones, arguably the fastest we've tested. The ROG Phone 2 Ultimate, which we're in the review process, is faster in some of the graphics tests. But the overall system tests, the 7T took the lead, and nice. So OnePlus calls it Oxygen OS, calls their version of Android 10 Oxygen OS. It's Android 10 skinned with all the customizations necessary for this hardware, and it's nice and clean and light, no bloatware, very few pre-installed apps, just a beautiful software setup out of the gate. And the thing's only $599, so you end up with a platform that's competes or beats some of the latest flagships that are twice as expensive, cost twice as much. But, there's caveats. We were talking about this earlier. OnePlus isn't just offering a $599 flagship because, they're sweethearts. the phone's missing a couple of features. Like, it doesn't have wireless charging, no expandable storage, no Wi-Fi 6. It's technically water and dust resistant according to OnePlus, but no actual certification, no headphone jack. So there's things that the company does. The message is they listen to their community and only offer what the community wants to try to keep prices really competitive. And I believe that on some levels, because the features that are here are like the thoughtful ones. You want a really good screen. You want good battery life. You want fast charging. There's a really cool switch on the side to quickly switch between silent, vibrate, or normal ringer modes. So a nice physical hardware switch, so you're not dealing with a volume rocker in the dark. Just cool, thoughtful features at a really competitive price. So I like the phone. And I know you like OnePlus as well.
Yeah. And actually, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that for me, that's what's interesting about the products they've been offering, especially for the last few iterations. You get a lot of phone for the money with maybe a few less bells and whistles than you might get with like a Samsung product. The wireless charging, which, arguably there's some convenience there. I ran a Galaxy S series in the 9 and the 10 for a little while. Before I went to the OnePlus 7 Pro, which is what I have now. It's my daily driver. And, just dropping it on that cradle and having it charge in my office, just without having to plug anything in was really cool. That's nice for wireless charging. The flip side of that is, where you don't have wireless charging, you don't get IP68. You do get, or expandable storage. These are all things that add cost. IP68, especially in terms of waterproofing a device, adds a lot of cost. And they do waterproof the device, but that whole certification, you have to go through testing, validation. It's cost, a lot of cost. So taking those features out, what they do add is what the community, if you hit the OnePlus community page, and they have an app on the phones too, where you can hit it from the mobile page or from the web. And they basically, try and address what users are asking for. So you get 8 gigs of RAM, 12 gigs of RAM options. That's the base is 8 gigs. You get, 128 gigs of storage, 256 gigs and higher. And it's UFS 3. So it's like the fastest storage you can get, a 90 hertz display. These are all things that, power users are asking for. Plus, 35 or 40, I don't know how many watts the brick is, but whatever it is, I think it's a 35 watt brick.
Man, yeah, 6 amps, 30 watts, I think.
30 watts. Okay. So yeah, it charges wicked fast. And so, you can top off, if you don't have wireless charging, you can top off really quick. I actually have a OnePlus car adapter, this little thing I think it's a 25 watt car adapter. I plug that thing in my car and it's like, bang, it's topped off in, 20 minutes or whatever. So, there's, like you said, thoughtful inclusions, the slider on the side. I've just been impressed. And the devices are beautiful. They're ergonomically really well designed. I have curved glass. Does the 7T have curved glass as well? Or is it more of a flat design?
It's labeled 3D Gorilla Glass, but if anything, it's just a really slight curve on the edge. It's mostly flat.
It's just subtle. Yeah. It's not crazy. I think the Pro 7 Pro might be a little bit more curved. I don't know. Anyways, impressive stuff. They still have to work on their camera software. I think their camera hardware is solid. Still working on maximizing what I would call shot AI. When you're in auto mode and having the camera detect, sort of best balance. Still optimizing that, I think. What did you think of the camera performance on it yourself?
If you're in well-lit situations, I like it. Like, even indoors and outdoors with good lighting, it's great. I had some shots in the review where my dog was sort of backlit looking through the door. And when there's a strong backlight, there's definitely a loss of detail in the pup's face, especially in the darker areas around the nose and the muzzle. But I think that's stuff that'll get fixed, because if you look at the nightscape shots, it captured a lot of detail in the dark. That worked well. And also, like, the portrait mode, way more subtle and not as customizable as what I'm used to on Samsung. But it works. Fewer aberrations around the subject. It's a solid camera. If you have a phone a couple generations old, it's going to be way better. If you're comparing it to the latest phones now, OnePlus has some catching up to do, but it's good.
Yeah. And for the price, as you noted, is it this one's $599?
$599. Yeah.
Okay. I think the 7 Pro actually $579 for the 8 gig, 128 gigs of storage setup. The value is it's off the hook comparably when you think about the base specs. You get a Snapdragon 855 Plus in that, which is the fastest thing you can get in Android these days, basically. So the value there is solid. I mean, you really can't beat it. Yeah, off contract, unlocked, $599, just good stuff. So yeah, we'll probably drop a link in the description to check out certainly the review, but also to head to OnePlus's site if you're interested in picking one of these up, because I think it's a great buy. That's what's cool about it. I think it's real easy to recommend a phone that performs excellently. And also, by the way, is like one of the best values in the market from a cost standpoint. We won't get yelled at for that, right? Not in the comments, right, Marco?
I don't think so. Speaking of comments, we have Gregor Miller, I think, making an Italian joke saying, "Show me the pasta." So here you go, Gregor. Here you go. Here's some pasta.
Hey, there are 3 Italians in this stream right now.
Well, Brittany, we all know there's only 2 kind of people in the world. Italians and people who wish
those who wish they could be.
Nice, excellent. Well, yeah, we get some vowels going on, so you'll have to forgive us for that. But you're welcome as well. So let's move on and let's talk about a little something that Brittany dug into. We asked her to dig into. The poor lady. And it was an interesting, topic that sort of caught my attention, and I think Brittany, you latched onto it as well. And that's which major AI companies care most about your privacy? Amazon, Google, Apple, or Facebook? And the premise behind this topic, that we researched, that Brittany researched, I should say, it was who to trust, number one, and who has the best track record amongst the companies that are offering smart devices. Amazon with the Echo, Google with Google Assistant and various home devices, Nest, all their different smart home products. Apple, of course, with Siri, and then Facebook, where people trust way too much of their data, and also has tons of AI, from anything from image recognition to whatever. You did some research there, Brittany, because you're a research kind of lady.
I am a research kind of lady.
What did you think?
So first, I would like to warn everybody that before you read this article, know that it is over 2,000 words. So it's a lengthy one. And the reason it's lengthy, the reason it's strapping is because their privacy policies for each of these companies is so long and also can be surprisingly difficult to find. So you can't go to one site and read their entire privacy policy. You actually have to go to multiple different pages to find their varying privacy policies on different things. And so when it came to this, so what our goal with this particular article was, out of all these companies that are creating AI products and are increasingly looking at creating even more AI products, which one cares the most about your privacy, who has the best track record, and in many ways, which one is kind of the worst. And so while this article, I would say for the most part, there's not really a winner. I do think there's a definite loser, and that is probably Facebook. And the reason is that their portal device is actually pretty secure if you actually dig into what they're doing and how much information they share and where that information goes. They try to keep a lot of your data on the device. They're not sending it off to the cloud, which companies like Amazon and Google do very frequently. But Facebook's track record isn't great. And not to say that the other companies don't have these perfect track records, because they certainly don't. But the fact that Facebook is now receiving one of the largest FTC fines in the history of the FTC says something. And there was also a couple of things on their privacy policy for Facebook in general that I found a little bit concerning. For example, Facebook takes information from other companies about you, and you don't even have to be a Facebook user. So they're learning about you, even though you have never signed up for a Facebook account. And the other companies don't really seem to do that, or at least they don't bring it up in their policy. So I find that particularly concerning. Like if I'm using a Google device or an Apple device or something like that, obviously they're going to need some of my information for something. But the fact that Facebook can gather your information and you've never given them permission in the first place, to me, is a little bit concerning, especially in the future. So while the Portal device can't do that right now, who's to say it won't do it in the future?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I don't know how I feel. Facebook is easy to hate on because of their lousy track record, right? I mean, it's real easy to sit back and go, Cambridge Analytica is a mess, and how could they do this, and whatever. But you also think about that bullet point in their privacy policy that you homed in on, and I think that's a great observation. Facebook isn't on every platform,
right?
And that's what's interesting is that they, in order to do that, they need site integration and platform integration with other partners. So you'll have a Facebook comment section on a website, and if you log in, and I don't know, put your email address or something like that, they're going to try and maybe you don't have a Facebook login, but there's a Facebook cookie, a Facebook pixel, and they're tracking you as a user. Maybe it's not user identifiable, but they're tracking your habits. And a lot of companies do this online, and it's really hard to find the delineation line. I mean, this is
absolutely. And I did point that out as well. I mean, Google and Apple also have their own web browsers and things like that. So they're going to collect your information in that way. So Facebook isn't, I should say, unique, but because of the way they were created, because they're really more of a social media platform, they're going to have to gather your information in a different way than, let's say, Google through Chrome or Apple with, whatever.
Interesting. And so you make a good point about intent. And so I think that's what you just talked about was intent. And when you think about the other companies, whether it be Apple or Google or Microsoft, whoever, who have these different AI platforms, Amazon, excuse me, you have different areas of intent or, core business that they need to gather this information on. In the case of Facebook, it's a little weird. Like it's a little
weird. Yeah. They don't quite fall into the same category as Google or Apple or even Amazon. So their tactics are a little bit more, I wouldn't say subtle, but they're just different. Right. Where at least when you're using let's say Google Chrome, you kind of figure that Google's going to be collecting some of your information, right? It's sort of implied. And I will say to Google's credit, I did find that their privacy policy was the most explicit. They were very clear about exactly what they were gathering and where they were gathering it from. And Apple was pretty similar. So I think also too, because they've been dealing with this longer, they've developed a much more robust privacy policy where you can find things more easily. Amazon's privacy policy was actually surprisingly difficult to track down. So I really hope that they end up improving their website for that, because their privacy policy was here, there, everywhere. It was in this really kind of janky website that looked like something from 5 years ago that they obviously update very infrequently. So I really do hope that they improve that. I think maybe the lesson is that no matter what you're using, it's important to read up on the privacy policy so that you're comfortable with the kind of information that they're taking and sharing.
Yeah. Good idea. Be an informed consumer, an informed reader, an informed social network, or whatever you happen to be doing. Before we ask Marco's opinion and then move on real quick, it sounds to me like Facebook was sort of worst case of all these companies. Who would you say kind of waved the flag as the company that cares most about your privacy?
I would say probably Google and Apple are equal, except that with Android 10, there is more accessibility when it comes to your privacy features. So I would say because of that accessibility with Android 10, I would give Google the slight edge over Apple, but I would say they're pretty comparable. Amazon's kind of in the middle. Because they do actually share quite a bit of your information with third parties, not just because you're purchasing items, but because of their own advertising methods as well. And then Facebook would probably be fourth place. So for the most part, I probably put Google and Apple on the same level. But of course, remember that all of these people are looking at your information. So it's not like, they're closing the doors and they're like, okay, you have you time, right? We're not gonna get involved with that. None of them are doing that. So keep that in mind with this ranking, if you will.
Yeah, no, it's take it with a grain of salt, of course. And then also, I would offer an anecdotal thing real quick, and then Marco, I want to get your take real quick as well. But I was talking to a silicon manufacturer, a silicon OEM, key silicon OEM across multiple platform types of devices. I'm going to leave their name out, but it was an engineer that was speaking, and this engineer deals with lots of different companies that make hardware devices and lots of different operating systems and platforms and stuff like this. And the one thing he did say, and he was, there's Google's in this ecosystem for this silicon partner, Apple, all of them. I think you can't, I guess you could say Facebook maybe with the portal, I'm not sure. But he did say Apple, when it comes to privacy from a platform standpoint and the stuff that they have to go through, like the pain and anguish that they have to go through for compliance and stuff, Apple was easily the most rigorous. And that was even over Google. And that was just an anecdotal thing. It was interesting to hear.
I would agree with that. I think, like I said, for me, the thing was that I think Google is more accessible. And especially with Android 10, they're very open about, hey, did you know that this app is gathering this kind of information? Do you want to change that? So I do think, like I said, Apple, like you just mentioned, is very, like, they are more concerned than other companies. But I think that accessibility and transparency also helps the situation too.
Yeah, Marco, you trust anybody?
Well, I'm a geek, so I'm going to have some level of trust because I'm going to use Google Assistant. I'm going to use, my Echo. There are sacrifices you make to do that, and it is what it is. The underlying thing with all of these companies is they make money from data, and they use that data to either make, targeted products or to target ads, and they're going to use every possible method within the boundaries of the law to leverage that.
Sometimes outside of the boundaries of the law.
Yeah, Exactly. So, I mean, it is what it is. This is the world we live in for now. And, we have a question from Gregor about, has DuckDuckGo gained any momentum? And I'll say anecdotally, within like the super nerdy groups that I'm in, lots of people use DuckDuckGo, but it's nothing compared to any of the other competitors to Google.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah, when it comes to search, when it comes to internet search and all that good stuff, Google is it. And I just really don't know, what else. You can Bing it, but I mean, who uses Bing, right? So, there's a reason
Googling is a verb. Right. Yeah, Binging is not a verb.
No, I think that the most recent data was 91% Google usage. Everybody else cuts up that last 9%.
Yeah, they've cornered that market. So keep it all in perspective. Brittany, thank you. That was good stuff.
Thank you.
Great data to dig into, and good bedtime reading to put yourself in the know for sure.
Great.
So all right, let's move on real quick, and we're going to jump gears very quickly to some Wi-Fi technology that our good friend Paul Lilly, or as we call him, P. Diddy, at the site, took a look at, and that is the killer Wi-Fi 6 AX1650. This is a little M2 chip. This is a very small little device, and you might not otherwise think of something that looks like that as a product you might be interested in, but I would offer that perhaps even for the mainstream consumer, if you are willing to upgrade your laptop, you can perhaps get yourself into the latest generation of Wi-Fi technology. So this is Killer Networks or Rivet Networks. Killer product. They started initially as Killer Networks, but Rivet is the company now that puts this out. And it's essentially a software-packed, firmware-packed Wi-Fi 6 NIC M2 module that plugs into an M2 slot. That's based on Intel Wi-Fi 6 technology, as well as Bluetooth 5. It's a multi-mode module, but Wi-Fi 6 adapter that actually you could think of as an upgrade. It will also certainly come in OEM systems. But Wi-Fi 6 is an interesting technology, and it's where Wi-Fi is going in the future. So you have a whole new crop of Wi-Fi 6 routers that are coming out now, and Wi-Fi 6 or client devices. So whether it be a handset or a laptop, It's easier in the migration, I think, to get these things into laptops because of the modularity that you see with this product, for example. But even in handsets like the Galaxy S10 series and Galaxy Note 10 series from Samsung, they have Wi-Fi 6 capability as well. Now, what does Wi-Fi 6 get you? We'll talk about this real quick. It's basically the next generation of speed. So it's multi-gig Wi-Fi performance, as well as multi-client, greater capacity with multiple clients. So if you think about the average home, you've got, it used to be that we had I don't know, maybe you talk about a 4-person family. You had 4 phones and 4 laptops, 8 devices tops. Well, now it's those 4 people times their devices times also, oh, by the way, you've got a Nest thermostat, you've got a Ring doorbell, you've got all of these connected devices. So the potential for 30, 20, 30 Wi-Fi connected devices in a single household, all active at once, is actually not uncommon with smart homes, with the modern smart home. And each of these devices is, grabbing a slice of bandwidth. Well, multi-user MIMO and Wi-Fi 5, or the previous generation AC, helped with that. Wi-Fi 6 takes that a step further, increases capacity. I'm not going to get into the weeds about how it does that, but it does. And it also increases speed. So you get, 2+ gigabit per second potential theoretical speeds. You've got 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz channels. And, this is a 2x2 setup in this NIC. And you can see here in the performance graphs real quick, what sort of performance you can expect from a true Wi-Fi 6 connection. So in the case of one of those bars, I think you saw about a 1.6 gigabit, per second throughput. And so, or 1.5, 1.6, in that range. Whereas the fastest, Wi-Fi 5 or AC device, maybe you can peak out close to a gigabit, if the wind is blowing in the right direction, you don't have many devices on your network. The other thing that Wi-Fi 6 helps with is range as well. Again, you have to have a pure Wi-Fi 6 network, router and client devices that are compatible to take advantage of the technology. But what a module like the killer Wi-Fi 6 AX1650 does is allow you to maybe adapt some of your current laptops to that technology. There's certain areas where Wi-Fi 6 isn't going to get you a whole lot of extra performance. As you get further away from the radio, we did see some smaller gains, but the reach tends to be better. And there was actually something I learned from the folks at Qualcomm, who are also fairly entrenched in Wi-Fi 6 technology, especially from a client standpoint with handsets. And that is, your AC clients on a Wi-Fi 6 router, legacy AC devices, actually will benefit, or I should say, excuse me, I had that reversed. Wi-Fi 6 clients, like a handset, for example, will actually benefit on a legacy router in terms of reach, just because of the new technology and signaling that they employ. So there's potential there, and it's would behoove you to sort of, as you can, migrate to the Wi-Fi 6 ecosystem, if you will, sooner than later, because you will see some small benefits in terms of reach just with a Wi-Fi 6 capable radio on a endpoint device, on a client device in and of itself. So that's just a side point, but interesting product, Marco. I don't know if we want to dig into it much more than that, but the other thing I should note that I didn't talk about in this whole Wi-Fi 6 detail is that with this product, you also get, of course, Rivet Networks killer technology, which is packet prioritization and traffic shaping for gaming, for multimedia usage, and all that good stuff. I'll mention this just quickly. It's probably actually more core to the review than I gave justice to trying to explain Wi-Fi 6, so forgive me. But it's actually pretty cool. You can prioritize your packets for gaming. You can prioritize different streams for, let's say, you're doing a podcast. You can actually pick a level of priority for each of those different tasks that are running on your system, and make sure you can always hit a certain latency or a certain peak bandwidth that you need for that priority service, all within a nice, slick user interface. How'd I do, Marco? Jesus, that was a lot to squeeze in.
You covered everything. I'll summarize it this way. It's only a $35 upgrade to get the best Wi-Fi. So you have an Intel-based Wi-Fi 6 chip with, Killer really is the only company doing really nice enthusiast-level QoS software for gamers and enthusiasts. So arguably, the most comprehensive QoS software with Intel, who makes arguably the best Wi-Fi chips for only $35. It's pretty cool.
Awesome. I don't know how, but somehow the title changed again on the stream. I think this must be YouTube messing with us.
We've had rotten luck with this stream.
Yeah. This must be YouTube messing with us, but I'm going to go ahead and save it again. I don't know how that happened, but we'll wrap it up on that, and we might come back to an article we talked about in the news earlier this week, and that's that folks are suing because Fortnite's too addictive, which sounds like crazy to me, but we might come back to that in the next cast. But we do want to close out with a quick mention on something we've got cooking. Marco, giveaway, quick hints, and then we'll sign off.
Yes, killer AMD-based Falcon Northwest 20th anniversary edition system. We're just waiting for visuals, trying to figure out what kind of graphics are going to be on it. But the machine is actually being reviewed right now. When the review is done, we are going to give it away. We're hammering out the details on how we're going to give it away, but stay tuned. It's going to be awesome.
Awesome. Yes, we like to give things away here, and we try to bring in the partners to do so. The good folks at Falcon Northwest are going to help us out. We think you're going to like it. We have the review incoming. We're going to launch that review, and you'll be able to see the product before we give it away. So stay tuned for that. Details forthcoming at hothardware.com, where you can find us on the web, twitter.com/hothardware. Please tweet to us. We'd like to hear from you. Facebook.com/hothardware, YouTube.com/hothardware vids. And HotHardware, we're everywhere. Hit thumbs up and subscribe, and the reminder bell so you get notified when we go streaming. And with that, I will say, actually, Brittany, would you like to say goodbye to everybody?
Yeah. Goodbye, everyone. Have a good night. Tune in next time, whenever that may be.
Wednesday next week, hopefully.
Wednesday of next week. Hit the subscribe or the notification bell so you'll know.
Thank you, Brittany.
No problem.
Brittany's been very helpful. We appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Take care.